Hello Old School RuneScape and welcome to this week's Q&A. I am joined by Mod Ash.
Hello.
Mod Husky.
Yeah.
And Mod Lenny.
Hello.
I've got Mod JD on the chat, so at Old School RS should you have any questions. And a big thanks to Mod John for running the stream. It's the usual announcements before we get into the question answering. You can get more free membership with our friends at Twitch Prime. Click the Prime Loot Crown and follow the steps there. Or hit !Prime to read exactly what I just said. This year's Halloween event is ending with tomorrow's game update, so you've got about 18 hours to head to the chicken farm northeast of Lumbridge to begin the event and unlock this year's rewards. Mod John, could you show us the Halloween image, please?
That's 11:30 game time, by the way, 11:30 a.m.
So, by completing the event, you too could cosplay as a haunting mole person. So make sure you head to the chicken farm and begin the Halloween event before it removes from the game. Thank you, Mod John.
Does the mole think your head looks like it there?
I think that was the intention of the player who submitted that image, yeah. It's not too dissimilar. It's probably the best we can offer so far in game.
For the alternate colour of the outfit, we're probably going to need an alternate colour of the mole.
Like an undead ecto mole.
Yeah, luminous green mole.
Radioactive.
That doesn't sound healthy.
Well, if you get bitten by a radioactive mole, then you become Mole Man. That doesn't sound so exciting, though.
Next one. Bounty Hunter is being added to the live game tomorrow. Previously it was in beta testing. If you haven't tried the beta, then with tomorrow's update you can expect a new point system which incorporates kill streaks, a player bounty task system, a reward shop which contains new bounty crates which increases the profitability of Bounty Hunter, a tiered hat, a rotating hotspot system which offers more reward for fighting in specific areas, and last but not least, a fantastic new interface.
I'd like to talk some more about the hotspots, if I may.
Absolutely, please do.
Thanks. If you said no, that would really put you on the spot. Anyway, so based on the feedback from last week's updates in the beta, we've made some changes to the hotspots. Players didn't like how often they were in multi-way because, like, almost more than half the time they were in multi-way areas, and that's not ideal for us. So we've moved some. The very low-level ones moved up to the Eastern Green Dragons because people asked for a hotspot there to commemorate the good old days when you could do a lot of bot killing there. Although I don't think you're going to find them so much on a bounty world. And we've taken the Boneyard one that was multi-way, moved it to the Hobgoblin Mine, which has similar kind of scenery around it, but it's single-way. We had another one in Gorok, and we've also skewed the weighting of them as players suggested, so that the multi-way ones don't come up nearly as often, but just occasionally they'll be there for anyone who feels brave and wants to have a go. We've also capped the number of emblems that can be upgraded from any individual kill. Originally it would just do every emblem in the inventory. That's if you'd got the maximum kill streak tracked already. That's a little bit much, given that you could trundle around with 28 tier 4 emblems, get them all upgraded to tier 5 simultaneously. We think we should probably not do that, at least not on launch. But it's rather hard to gauge this one, because it's going to depend so heavily on what the traffic looks like and how players want to engage in it. So we expect that even if we're putting it into the game for people to start clocking up real rewards, we'd like people to understand that we're going to be changing it some more in light of how it goes. But we've got the basic mechanic in place from the beta testing, and we're very grateful to everyone who's had a go at it and given it a try and let us know what they'd like tweaked. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Last announcement from me is the Twisted League. The first Old School RuneScape League will be arriving next week on 14th of November. You can learn more about it by hitting !Leagues in the chat. And the blog was also recently updated. You'll notice there's a changelog at the top of the blog, which highlights any new information that appeared. Could I perhaps pop you on the spot if you could clarify what appeared in the changelog?
See if I can remember everything that changed. We rebalanced the first selection of relics. We've rebalanced them all, but those are the ones we've actually shown the players, so we might as well communicate what those changes were. The ammunition one has been increased from 80 to 85% on saving ammunition runes. The Endless Endurance one felt a bit too strong with the half prayer reduction, so we've given it 4 health per minute instead for your natural regen. and the prayer one has now got the half prayer drain rate on it as well. We've also clarified a lot of some of the details which we have spoken to people on various media places. Just figured it'd be better to put them all on the blog because that information is available to the player in the game, such as the addition of like anti-dragon shields, barbarian rods, pestilent mortar to various shops, as well as stews, I believe. What else did we do? We added Eagle's Peak as a quest, so that people can catch the Grey Chinchompas, which is required for a diary. For the other diary requirements which we didn't want to give the player, such as the Fairy Ring and the Monster Examine on a Troll, we've just auto-completed those and clarified that that's what we're going to do so that those are completable. And I think that's all off the top of my head. I think there is a bit more on there. That's all. We've specified that we are replacing some item drops in the game, such as the Kodai Insignia will drop as the full Kodai Wand because you can't get a Master Wand. The Hydra Claw will drop as a full Dragon Hunter Lance. The Hydra Leather will drop as the full Ferocious Gloves. And the Broken Dragon Hasta will drop as a non-broken Dragon Hasta. So all that's now in the changelog. A lot of it was just stuff that we just didn't communicate at first, the rules, and we just figured we'd put it out there for the players.
Now, that's a pretty detailed answer. Nice one.
Excellent. Yeah, well remembered. Very well
Also, just
remembered.
saw somebody in the chat asking whether you'll be able to play leagues on mobile, which, yep, no reason why you couldn't. You might not have quite as easy a time as other players, but if you want to compete on mobile, go for it.
Well, JD popped that question right in front of me. How did you know? I also saw somebody in chat ask whether Mod Ash's mug is an act, and it's actually in fact empty. Do you not recall the RuneFest announcement where players were teabagged?
There was a player who tweeted a picture of brown stain on their white jacket. Thankfully, they didn't seem too angry about this.
Of course not.
Also, I nearly hit Mod Wolf.
Almost. Okay, so moving on, we'll begin with the questions. Could we have a status update on Mod Ash's hit splats work?
Gladly. I was asked to put that one on hold back in the summer because the changes made for Song of the Elves were going to conflict with the changes I was making, and either I'd launch first and they'd have to quickly retrofit my changes into Song of the Elves, or Song of the Elves would launch first and I'd have to retrofit their changes into mine at my leisure. And that was obviously the right way around to go because I'd have as much time as needed, and they actually needed to launch in the summer. So done that. Pretty sure I've worked out how to adapt the Song of the Elves stuff that launched to work with what I've been writing, which included getting into Zolcano's damage code, by the way. Thank you.
I may be sorry for that one. I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, we're good. We're good. Of course, if it breaks on launch, then it was on you. Since then, I'm afraid I actually had to put it on hold for some other things. In particular, my bit of the team then got the Last Man Standing project, which wasn't entirely expected. And having dealt with that, we really wanted to get on with the Bounty Hunter thing that was promised in 2017. So, for all the Hitsplat thing technically predates it, we wanted to get on with the Bounty Hunter. And I hope to be back on Hitsplats maybe around the end of this month, if possible. That's not the only thing we're dealing with, though. It's been a very long time since we ran a poll of just general things. I'm not going to call it qual, but the smaller work that, in response to things players have asked for, a lot of them have built up, and we'd like to put a bunch of those to a poll later this month. Mod Tide will be implementing those most likely, taken from things players have asked for. Also, a couple of things that I mentioned at RuneFest, like the ability that we'd like to offer. Not sure what you're going to say to it, but we'd like to offer the ability to equip items while the bank's open, so that you don't have to shut and reopen it quite so much. Letting you equip them is easy, by the way. Letting you switch to a view that lets you unequip them again, that's the harder bit of it. Also, I mentioned a couple of interfaces while I was up at RuneFest that need a bit of love, usability improvements. So Mod Tide's been working on those, and we hope to get some of this to a poll near you later this month.
Excellent, thank you.
So that's covered what they asked for,
And
along
more.
with a buttload of other stuff that I wanted to tell them anyway. Oh well.
I'm sure they're not complaining. Next question. Last week you answered a question about the effects of hiding poll results and mentioned that you were continuing to review how you poll content. Could you share any results from your last internal discussion?
Oh, yes. Close up again, please. So,
More Ash, more Ash.
what else can I ask him to do? Anywho.
That's my knee.
Yep. So, we know that the poll system is not very good when it comes to things that relatively small chunks of the community engage in. PvP being one of the hottest topics among there, but it also applies to anything that's used by a specialist group of the community. Castle Wars might spring to mind as well, or Barbie Assault. Like, players have long complained that if we ask everybody in the whole community what they think about it, yes or no, the chances of the outcome being really relevant to what the users really wanted in there is quite low. Now, we've had some back and forth about whether it's fair to exclude people based on arbitrary criteria. It will be a line in the sand, and we will draw it in a place that some of you will object to. And we accept that some of you are going to be unhappy about that kind of thing. There's also the matter that, you know, if we ran a poll where to get access to it, you just had to, you know, clock up 10 kills or whatever, you know, a lot of people will rush out there, get 10 kills on their mates' alts, and promptly claim, yep, I engage in this kind of content for the rest of eternity. So I had some chats with players at RuneFest, among other places, about what if we used requirements that actually required you to have done it reasonably recently. Now, you could just rush out there and get the requirement every time we've got such a poll coming up, because you would be able to see it coming. We write blogs. But if you wanted to skew a poll out of spite, and you had to take the time and trouble to go and do this with alts or with grinding the minigame on a quiet world, whatever that it turns out to be for that particular poll, if you had to do that every time, you'd have to go to a fair bit of effort to be a jerk. And while I have no doubt that out on the internet there are people who will go to a lot of effort to be a jerk, I think the number of irrelevant responses we'd get would be reduced quite substantially from the status quo where requirements are just not that high and anyone can have a go. So, of course, if we were to poll something in that regard that affects the whole game, it would be unfair to exclude people who didn't tick what we'd deemed to be the boxes for it. So if you were okay with that kind of approach, we'd aim to restrict the designs we're pitching so that content doesn't affect people so much outside of the cohort it's tooled for. An example might be, like we offered on the something we tried on the last Bounty Hunter poll. If we introduced new weapons from it, they could work only in PvP or only in PvP areas. That way, we don't end up making a new weapon via PvP that's the new meta for one-hitting Verzik or something like that. We'd try and ring-fence the designs that way. And in return for that, we'd aim that only the people who are relevant to the content get to express a view on whether it should be done or not. Now, it's not going to be perfect, because ultimately you make a tradable item, there'll be economic impact from it existing. It will be on the GE, other people will buy it, and the flow of money in the world will be skewed. Now, I've seen people raise that as a concern. I'd hope that it's not a huge one, and that people might be willing to accept it as a compromise. In terms of what we poll, especially in terms of PvP, where we rely so heavily on what players are willing to advise us on, the idea of using a PvP council was obviously discussed, and you know we've consulted players before on things. Sometimes it's worked out well for individual changes, some changes maybe not so much. We do intend to keep using players for input very heavily on this kind of thing, rather than making everything fully subject to the vagaries of a poll. But we'll be hoping to use them more to steer what goes into such a poll, rather than a group of people who just say, yes, this will be done to the game, and there'll be no further discussion with the rest of the community. We don't think that would work out too well in the long run. Anything you guys want to ask me about that on behalf of the players or on behalf of yourselves?
You covered a lot very eloquently. I'd say to the players, expect us to communicate more regarding polling to you soon. There are lots of things to consider. A player I saw in the chat used your example of a Castle Wars specific poll, for example, and said, what if I haven't played Castle Wars recently, but I like Castle Wars and I want it to be better? Where would I be able to vote on that? So there are niche scenarios we need to work out.
Well, the thing about it is that a poll doesn't just turn up out of nowhere. Players have been pretty clear they don't like it when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So we tend to put out a blog in advance, and if there was going to be requirements of this nature, it would be appropriate for us to, disclose that there'll be one, even if we don't say exactly what the requirement will be. And hopefully, if you do like the minigame as much as you say, you'll have an opportunity to come and have a go at it and put your time in, especially if you've got a long stack of points from there already, because I think we do have some tracking of that. What we'd prefer to avoid, though, is requirements where anyone can just rock up with minimal effort, tick the box, and then do it. But even with something that can be farmed, I think the number of people filtered out by this will be significant. See, the Bounty Hunter poll had that question at the bottom of it, asking why people vote why people vote no if they did. And for all the proportion of people saying, I just don't like PvP, so there, that's a low number of people who declared themselves to have that view. But it's still significant, especially with the pass threshold being as it is. For what it's worth, this doesn't just have to be about PvP either. I mentioned mini-games. We could also apply a lot of the same thought to high-end skilling or bosses. Because the poll requirements, they are low and have been for a considerable time. And I wouldn't mind if we applied this kind of thing to refine slightly who is voting. We did once get the data team to do some in-depth tracking to try and find out whether people were really mass voting. The contentious one at that time was the GE itself. Like, it was rumoured that probably bots or gold farmers or whatever or merch bots would have a massive incentive to downvote it in bulk. And Matt, sadly no longer with us, spent a while getting data gathered to see whether this was happening. And I don't think we found anything that was going to skew a poll of that number of people. With tens of thousands of votes, it would take quite a lot to really skew the outcome by more than 1%. But for the Bounty Hunter thing, we did find that there was enough that it would have made a difference, which is why I'm interested in making this change. I think it's going to upset a lot of people, because you are all ultimately one community and maybe should all vote in the game's interests. I just don't think it's been working that well, and I hope that this is something you'll be willing to take as a compromise.
Cool, thank you very much. I've had a question from the chat from Eckmeister. Are there any plans for a new, very high difficulty boss like the Inferno? So we revealed our plans on stage at RuneFest, and a new, very high difficulty boss wasn't part of them. It's not to say we'd never do one again. I think there's a lot of appetite in the team to offer more challenging, more engaging content.
I mean, I think the closest thing that we have on cards at the minute is the Nightmare of Ashihama, which obviously, I'm sure if someone tried to go and solo it, that would be a huge challenge.
It'd be an interesting stream.
It would be, but I don't think that's quite what they're looking for when they say something like the Inferno, but there's not currently anything sort of lined up similar to that.
Cool. So last week we answered a question, which was, when will we see a high-stakes LMS weekend with the new LMS minigame? So Modrock did some investigation. He found out that it's currently broken, but there is a job in the backlog to make it possible.
Yeah, the code changes for the rewrite of it in the autumn sadly took out that mode, and since it wasn't operating at the time, it wasn't checked at the time. We're very happy to make it work again, but we will have to actually do so before it can be opened.
Cool. I have another question about Bounty Hunter. So Iron accounts won't be able to engage with the bounty crates. Was this intentional or is it an oversight? And if it isn't intentional, what could be done to reward Iron players?
So, apparently that was discussed a week ago, but unfortunately the message didn't get to me or Rock until this morning, which meant that we aren't able to do anything about it for tomorrow's launch. Sorry about that. We hope to be able to do something about it, even if not for next week, hopefully the week after. Anyway, the reason for it was if we put potions in there, like a stamina or something, then that makes them available at levels where Iron players previously couldn't get them, which is a pretty big deal. So we'd prefer not to have that impact from it. Now, what I'd expected to be asked to implement at the time was just a restricted list for, depending on maybe the players' levels, maybe apply this only to Iron players, maybe apply it to everyone just to be equal, but take into account attributes of the player and modify what the crate can give them. Somewhere along the line, I was asked to just block the Iron players from them altogether to keep it simple. Well, it's simple, so I deleted that code again and went with the simple approach. And I remain very happy to put back my version that was a bit more fully featured so that Iron players could have what was deemed appropriate. Now, I do quite like the idea of it being based on your attributes, Wintertodd style, maybe with a slightly more transparent scaling system than Wintertodd though. So long as we didn't end up with people building their account with very, very specific stats so that they only get certain types of things out of it, because that would be a little weird.
Thank you very much. So to summarise, not necessarily an oversight, but not entirely intentional either. We will review it and look to offer a way to reward Iron players for engaging with Bounty Hunter.
And I expect we'll be able to do that this month, but I do not think we can promise it for, well, we certainly can't do it for tomorrow, and I don't think it will be ready for the 14th either. Sorry.
Lovely, thank you very much. Next question talks about something we announced at RuneFest. Will the upcoming Black Graceful be a recolor, like the Agility Arena's Dark Blue, or will you have to buy an entire set of black with the hollowed marks?
So the intention for that, from what I can recall with our discussions previously, was we didn't want people to skip out on doing that 260 mark grind to get their Graceful, so it would act like just a recolor, similar to what you've seen. I think we were talking about them potentially being tradable as well, which obviously would mean they would have to be a recolor because we don't want to make Graceful tradable. But I think this is a good opportunity for the community to sort of give us their opinions on how they believe it should work, what they expect from that. I think a lot of people would agree that, don't just give people a way to skip it out. Also, from what I can recall from the design, it had quite high agility requirements to get to the higher levels of it. And at that point, I'd expect most players would have a Graceful anyway, right? So it would seem a bit weird to give them another set on top of that. That's my understanding of it.
I'm seeing lack of support for making it tradable in the chat.
Well, yeah, that's what I would understand.
Yeah, we'll have a blog detailing everything coming soon, and obviously post-blog, post-feedback, there will be a poll in which you'll be able to voice your opinion as well. So the answer to that question is it's not entirely decided.
Mm-hmm. I think that comes down to when the content itself is worked on by that dev, and there'll be a lot of design decisions taken then. I think one of the misconceptions from reading some people in the chat is they're not marks that you're used to, like, oh, you'll get one every 3 laps and things like that at that sort of rate. These marks would be, as far as I understood it, rare drops obtained from doing the activity, throughout it. So that's probably a better way to look at it, like significantly rarer than some of the marks, but maybe you'll need 1 mark or so to recolor a piece. That's how I understood it.
Okay, lovely, cheers. Why aren't Tsar on Konar's assignment list when Aviances and Basilisks are, apologies if I've butchered the pronunciation of those then, all 3 tasks required to be unlocked and only exist in one location? Sorry. I guess it's a case, why are some things present on the assignment list when others aren't?
Which one was again? The Aviant Caesar, is it?
And basilisks.
Desire.
I'm not sure exactly what the design decision there was, but I can see a kind of lore-based reason that the Tasakal probably wouldn't want to kill their sister race, if you want to look at it from a lore perspective. But
That sounds familiar, actually.
that could well have been Moded's thinking when he came up with the list. I believe it was him who came up with the list. But if it wasn't that, I don't know.
Funny, really, because the human Slayer Masters have never had any objection to assigning all kinds of things, and Cristilia in particular loves to send you after actual humans in the wilderness.
It is the wilderness after all.
Yeah, and she's just not nice. It's different anyway.
I think obviously players are asking because they want to get Jad tasks, because that there's always the Duradel versus Konar debate sort of coming up, and that's a big lure for doing Duradel if people want to get it. So that's the reason the players are asking. And I guess it might be strange if Jad dropped a Brimstone key, or the things inside did. Although we can obviously make exceptions for that.
To be honest, I like that there is a debate about which one people might wish to use based on an actual choice, rather than this is the best one, that is not the best one. You will want to use the best one.
Yeah, I think the players probably feel it's a lot weighted towards Duradel right now, and this might help make it that balanced choice. Maybe.
This one might be more... Well, Konar might be a bit more usable at lower levels than Duracell is.
Yes, very true.
Oh, cheers. Okay, next question. Let's talk some more about being a JMod. So do JMods have flexibility to work from home or work remotely? And I'm going to use this opportunity to tell you that we've got, I think, 2 old school openings at the moment, one for a senior producer and another for upload manager. So jagex.com/careers, see if you want to work on our team. I think the answer is yes, you can work remotely or work from home with a bit of flexibility, depending on what you do. So most developers, you're kind of not confined to your desktop, but I think you have to go through a few hoops to get laptop permissions to be able to work from remotely in that instance.
Yeah, and I think even in the case where some developers do have laptops and can on occasion work from home, it's a lot more beneficial to the team when we are sat together in the office and can kind of communicate a lot more easily. I think that's really kind of half of our process. It's not just sitting on our own and programming. We really do have a lot of gain from being around the team all the time.
I think it's an interesting thing. Like to use the term in the industry, we're not code monkeys, right? We are designers and we work with each other in that. I don't know a single day where I'm not going to someone's desk to ask questions or, having it. So it's not just a case of, go sit at home and code. I think I would want to be in the office personally.
Someone was asking what the upload manager job was in the channel, and that one is maybe a bit obscure. So every week or every update, we need to build a new version of the game that contains just the update and not all the other myriad things that anyone's been tinkering with in their test environments. And the upload manager's job is to supervise getting the right bits of code into the release build and not all the other bits of code. Now, version control systems like we're using Perforce, version control systems of that nature do a lot of the donkey work for you and make it a lot easier than it was when I was doing this job from 2005 through, on and off up until 2011 and beyond. Along then Mod Nexus did a lot of it for most of that, and now Mod Easty for RS3. But I've kind of got the job back again since Old School launched, and Maz and Kieran have done it as well. Maz is no longer with us. Kieran is not so available these days now. He's a manager. So what we'd like is for somebody to oversee that process and also coordinate the launch day, telling the servers when to reboot, supervising that process, liaising with all the other departments who need to know these things, like platform team for updating app stores to make sure that new versions of the app have come out at the right moment to synchronise with it. Web people occasionally when we have to synchronise with them, and and the staff who deal with the news posts and the like. So the upload manager's got a lot of legwork to do to make sure all people know what's going on, make sure that all the processes are run right, and type the right commands into the servers to make the right things happen. And on 2 occasions, I've had the interesting duty of turning the game off in an emergency. First time being 12th July 2018 for the Max Stack incident, and more recently for something involving Twisted Bows. It's an interesting role. I would consider it, well, I consider it high pressure. Other people might take it a bit more easy than I managed to. And we want somebody to do that. I would prefer that it be somebody who knows old school. I mean, you don't have to be Wook's caliber of knowledge, but if we're dealing with somebody who knows what things in the game are, at least, then that will make communication a heck of a lot smoother, especially when they're trying to make sure news posts have been written, reviewing news posts to make sure that the content matches what they've put into the release version. It's convenient if it's somebody who knows what players will interpret the news post to mean, so they can give more useful feedback about it. Anyway, so that's open. I don't know what's being offered for it. I suspect one's experience will be taken into account there. Like if one happens to have years of expertise in operating Perforce, then they can probably bring you in paying more than they pay me for it. So, whereas if you come in and you can type a bit, but you've never tried programming, maybe you're a bit at the lower end of the scale.
You should write a job description for that. I think you summed it up. Oh, you did? Excellent.
Yeah, Mod Bonsai had me, I think it went through HR and people who actually write job descriptions for a living, but I did write some of the text. I'm not quite sure what it's been changed into, but I've been in there somewhere.
Excellent.
I saw a question come up in the chat of somebody asking whether we happen to AFK in game while sitting around and programming, which
Yes.
I found quite amusing because I know I don't personally do it, or I have done on occasion, but people do in the office and nobody cares. It's perfectly fine so long as you're still doing your work, basically. Keyword in there being AFKing. So long as you're not sat there trying to do the Inferno and work. If you're just sat there cooking some monkfish, go for it.
Of course, if a member of staff were assuring us, no, it's all right, I'm only AFKing, and for some reason they never got any work done, someone might at some point suggest that there's something going wrong there and maybe they should fix it if they want to be staff.
Yeah.
What's worth, even Stumpy had a question about whether the upload manager job advert means I'm going anywhere. I'm going nowhere. I just want to not spend all my time coordinating other people's code because I'd like to spend more time producing my own. So this would be appreciated if somebody will kindly take it off me.
Excellent. Right, I have 2 questions about minigames, and it's not necessarily like we've seen before, which is add X reward to minigames. It's more about playability. So the first one is, could trouble brewing be looked at? So we've spoken about potential rewards, like the stuff, for example, but we haven't really spoken about the playability. Currently, the red team side is much worse than the blue team side. Can the sides be mirrored, or something similar to Castle Wars, so there's no difference if you're on either team? It makes no sense that one team's base layout is better than the others.
There's also a lot of things where if there was an option on things for doing the interaction rather than having to use something on something, it could be streamlined considerably. That trouble brewing needs it badly, realistically, to deal with trouble brewing, especially making the teams properly mirrored. It's the scale of thing like Last Man Standing was, multiple weeks worth, especially as we'd need multiplayer testing of it. I don't see us fitting that into 2019. It's something I'd like to do, but I'm not setting a schedule for it.
Wonderful, thank you. I'd expect a similar answer to the next question, which one concerns Castle Wars. So could you make it so more active players get more tickets from Castle Wars, like an extra ticket for X amount of players killed from bringing an enemy flag, extra tickets for an MVP role? Currently, for people only in it for tickets, the current meta seems to be to sit in the middle and doing minimal effort by defending the base. The player agrees that it's tempting to just AFK, but would like to see some changes to reward active, engaged players.
So I don't mind changing some things with Castle Wars, but I think it's very difficult to get a reward system properly, right? So if it's gameable and the gameability of it doesn't exactly correlate to the objectives of the game, then people are not actually trying to win, they're trying to get the most points for themselves, and that would be something we want to avoid doing.
Yeah, similar reason to why we've never given extra rewards for maximum DPS in pest control and things like that.
So, for example, if we gave more points per the number of flag captures you had more than your opponent, you might just have people say, okay, we're going to really win this game, and you guys lose, and then we'll swap around, and that might be the most tickets per hour, and I don't think that's what people really want. It's supposed to stay competitive. So I'm all for doing changes if required, and if we can come up with some good ones, but I think that's just something to be very careful of.
It's also worth noting that Trouble Brewing, if we change it in a way that's bad for it somehow, the number of regular Trouble Brewing players who will be affected is probably not that high. Whereas Castle Wars actually does have players and therefore has potential to be harmed, whereas Trouble Brewing, it's almost a no-brainer because you roll the dice, it probably won't get fewer players. Probably. We could, of course, do the thing where it just kicks you offline when you go in there or something. Or the bug it had in that 2008 where if you died in there, it didn't just take your hat, it took your hair with you and things like that. OSHD, surprisingly complicated dealing with some models.
Right, a question here, just for fun. Where would you put a level 104 agility shortcut? Kind of put you on the spot. Maybe I should have prepared you. We can come back to it. You can think about it and we can carry on.
Going up to the air obelisk.
Okay.
I got a request recently for a shortcut to the maniacal monkeys because one can get there. It just takes a bit of a faff. And if we were going to have such a shortcut, something that springs to mind.
I have a better answer.
Go on.
To the Dragon's Eye for the Master Clue step.
Yep.
Players are worrying about us adding post-99 requirements. I don't think we've any intention to do that. It's just a fun question from a player. Sorry for having fun. Okay, next question. In construction, the objects are very quick to build. In future, I'd like to see a heavy furniture that takes some time to build and requires higher construction level. Building that would be less intense, but a lower XP per hour. The method is not supposed to be AFK. It is construction after all. It's just supposed to be less intensive than mahogany tables and teak benches. What are your thoughts on that proposal from the player?
I'm struggling with the thought of it being heavier furniture that takes longer when we're already building big marble altars and other things of that scale. I'm not opposed to the idea in general of there being a somewhat less intensive method. I might be on my own on that, but I'm quite open to that idea. I just don't think heavier is the right distinction to make.
This may sound like a stupid answer, but is it not just less intensive if you build them at half the rate? If you don't click as quick as someone else? I mean, it's the same thing, right? It's less experience per hour and it's less click intensive.
That answer. For what it's worth, we do have redwood wood knocking about, and if we needed another material to be the thing that acts differently to everything else, we could use it for that, but I don't think we're going to.
I know it's not very nice to train construction at very fast experience rates. I've been through that. We just need to make sure we don't step on the identity of this. I'm not saying that is the identity, but you know, it is something that could be looked at. It always comes down to the design needs to be right, you know. So
cool. But John, could I ask you to show the West tweet image? I'm skipping a few here, I'm afraid. So earlier in the week, Mod West sent a tweet asking whether the armor design, which he previewed some time ago now, pre-Theatre of Blood, was still popular. And if it is, what niche would you expect it to fill? So do engage with Jagex West, or Mod West rather, so at twitter.com/JagexWest. Let him know whether you still like the armor design. Let him know what niche you'd expect it to fill. I know a lot of people are, I see it in the chat already, are talking about these symbol of Zamorak. I think he's well aware of your feedback for that already. So imagine that's not on there.
yeah, I think that's the difficult thing with the armor, because what would you use it for is always the question I try and think about when I'm coming up with designs for rewards, because it's easy to say, oh, we don't have a reward that does this, and then it's just because there's no use for it. So I think that's the interesting thing to think. Where would this be used, maybe as a niche or better than something else, and why? Like I think someone said, oh, make it give like passive increases to attack and strength if you've got 0 prayer, and I'm like, so that's interesting, but like if that's better than piety, what's the point of having prayer in the first place? Because you should just use, you know what I mean? It just makes that. So I'd be interested to hear if people have some interesting ideas for where armor can fit a niche, because I feel like armor is just, does it help my DPS? Great, use it. Unfortunately, armor is kind of a DPS thing in our game more so than a tanking thing. And I think that kind of shows with the way that Justiciar works, that Justiciar is fantastic at tanking, but there isn't really an applicable use for tanking outside of having an ult to tank Bandos or Krill and things like that. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Cheers, my John. Next question is about leagues. Is there going to be some way to redistribute relic choices into the Twisted League, maybe after reaching a certain number of points or tasks completed?
So we thought about this a lot during the design, and my reasoning for not making it so that is because it kind of makes the choice less impactful. The thing that we wanted to capture with this choice is like the first 3 is, it's like choosing your starter Pokemon, right? You don't get to level up and realize that Ivysaur sucks and want Charmander. It was kind of, you picked that choice for yourself. I mean, you can obviously make another account, but it's the idea that it gets gamed more often. Does that make sense? So people go, oh yeah, the meta is to do this because it's good early, and then you switch to this because it's good late, and then it just, everyone will have the same build, and I think that makes it less interesting. So no, there's currently no plans. It's locked in place. You have like 3 confirmations or something like that before selecting it. It makes it pretty clear that you can't go back on this, so you can't accidentally do it. Yeah, so that's why we haven't done. I'm sorry, Squirtle's okay, guys. He's just not Charmander.
We could play Pokemon Yellow and then encounter all the starters at different points of the game, so you get them all anyway.
Yeah.
I really didn't know any of that about Pokemon.
We just want to get technical on the Pokemon part. It's clearly always got to be the water starter when you're going against the ground gym first. No competition, really.
I saw a question asking, how does one become a PMod these days? So I spoke to Mod Steve W early in the week, so unrelated to this, about PMods. And so they're kind of upping their intake of PMods for Old School. I think they invited some 283 last week, and they're looking at a cadence of inviting like an extra 200 every 2 to 3 weeks. And the reason that it might sound quite a small number in comparison to the number of players we have, but there needs to be somebody to almost train the PMods and engage with the PMods, offer feedback to the PMods. So if that's why the number seems quite low, but it is on the player support team's mind. Cool, next question. Ash is on. Brilliant. I think he will know this, and I've wondered about this for ages. And slaying at wyverns while seeing this post brought it back to my attention. Why is it that when you're fighting in an area crowded with lots of NPCs, that a seemingly random NPC will attack you? I could be stood right beside a wyvern and be attacked by one 10 tiles away. Do NPCs have internal PID?
What they do have is just random behaviour, and in the case of wyverns, an extremely wide aggression range, like one of the biggest in use. And there isn't a particular reason for them to have it. It's just how the first wyverns were made back in, 2007-ish. And there they are with this huge range. And the game doesn't try and distinguish, yeah, but this one's nearer to you, so we'll give that one preference. If the one on the other side of the room is scouting for a target, you will probably be within its aggression range because it's huge, and it can yomp straight at you. And they've got a high attack radius too, so they can actually act on it. That's just the way they are. In terms of PID, yes, NPCs have an internal ID, and the game will execute their code in a one by one, same as it does with players, and they don't have a shuffle feature like players do. But I think in this case it's just the fact that wyverns were given a whopping great big range, which, by the way, we're open to reducing.
Cool, thank you very much. Next question asks, concerning the RuneFest announcement, what percentage of a player base do you reckon is a clan? And then goes on to say, you told us that 20% of players play Iron Man. What kind of percentages do you expect to play Group Ironman or Twisted League or engage in the clan? I'm genuinely interested because most new stuff seems to be aimed at group content or small minorities of players. So we don't really know how many players are in a clan because we don't have a clan system to check against.
I think clans is a bit of a funny one to answer because there might not be quite as clear-cut a line as people would want there to be, because there's a lot of people who will just sit around in sort of friends chats and they're technically part of a clan. They talk all day long while they're in game with the other people in that chat, but they might not engage in sort of clan events and things like that. So it really depends on sort of what line you're looking at when it comes to being part of a clan.
We've a big annual survey going out towards the end of the year, and I'm intending to ask some questions about players' kind of social habits in game, whether they're part of clans. So that should give us more indications to that. In terms of percentage of players I expect to play Group Ironman or Twisted League, I'm not entirely sure, if I'm perfectly honest.
I know that a lot of the management do look at things to say how many players do we expect to engage with this, and it's really hard to get an exact number. I think if they had that, they'd love to have an exact number of how many people would engage with it. It'll probably help them quantify things a lot easier. It's just really hard to know. We try and design content that we think the players will love, and as far as Group Ironman, it's an update that has been asked almost every week without fail on a Q&A for years.
Including this one.
Including this one.
Including this one, yeah.
So it just seems like, we're looking at, okay, we've got what do players want, what do we think's good for the game, that sort of thing. It just sort of seems to align, in that players really want it. It's obviously really good for us because people make memberships to make accounts membership to play it. So yeah, that's kind of why I don't think we can give a hard number on how many would engage. I would expect a large number of the existing Ironman accounts have already spoken about this with fellow Ironmen and are excited to do it. And I would like to think it would capture a larger audience in general than the Ironman game mode did, just because the idea of starting all over again is a daunting task with all those restrictions. And we're just saying, here's a new twist on it, still with restrictions, but you have help. So, like I said in the announcement, people don't like the thought of going, I've got to go train all my runecraft by myself and things. Oh, well, maybe one of you does it. And the other people help them by giving all them the essence, So it just makes it less of a sort of the grind's putting people off that come to the Ironman game mode normally.
We'd also look at kind of historic precedents of player numbers engaging in similar types of content. So for Group Ironman, we can look at the amount of players who engage with normal Ironman, Ultimate Ironman, Hardcore Ironman on release. Twisted League, I'd say we've probably got some comparisons with, say, Deadman, King of the Skill. That gives us some indication of what it might be. So I'm afraid I can't really offer a precise answer, but those are the types of things we consider.
Group Ironman symbol will be blue. Quick answer for the chat.
Cool. Next question is, can we please get a message in our chat box when our Ivan staff upgraded is close to running out of charges? Maybe a warning every 100 charges from 500 and below.
Seems legit.
Seems legit.
Does it not?
I didn't investigate.
Apparently.
I saw the question.
I'm pretty sure I've had a warning. I might just be used to using the trident. I'm not sure. But yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Cool. In a way we can report a player for breaking rules and other things, scamming and being generally a nasty piece of work and toxic, maybe we can give feedback for a player who's been really helpful, kind, and a good representation of old school spirit. Not so much a question, more of a suggestion. So could we have like an anti-abuse report feature in which you, almost like a commendation feature?
There'd have to be no gain really for it, right? Because then it's just, hey, everyone, like, paying 50k for people to say I'm a good person, and then
You become a player mod or something.
and then you become a player mod, but then that's actually set up by botters continually voting each other up, so they can use that now player mod account to advertise do advertising stuff. There's ways to game it. I don't see why we can't just say, yeah, this person was good. I'd like to acknowledge that, but I don't know how we'd make that visible. I mean, we could just say, oh, recent player enjoyed spending time with you, and I don't know.
You could just walk up to them and do the blow kiss emote.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling that if we did implement something like that, which we technically could do by all means, yeah, I just don't think it's going to be anyone's highest priority to sit there and look through all the commendations that come in.
We could have a high score table of it and
Nicest player.
catch you just, see who's possibly with a lot of alts and bots and bought attention, got a really high number. It'd be an interesting way of showing how you spent your time, but I don't think we could do anything with the info once we'd got it.
I think it works quite well for single-player games like Fable, which saw your character appearance change depending on your actions in game. So if you're bad, you became more demonic. If you're good, you became more angelic. So with all the worries about abuse and gaming it, perhaps it's not quite fit for old school RuneScape, unless players as well for us the design, which takes that into consideration.
So where Purple Party Hat suggests an honour system, well, you could well be honoured, but given that you could have achieved it by having a lot of bots try and vote for you, we wouldn't be able to give you any recognition for that honour without it just being really, really obviously farmable.
I think I've seen it before in games as well, where it's not as easy to chat with people. I think like some MOBAs and things like that, it's been, oh, we were playing, so we didn't have time to chat, and then it said game over, and you didn't have a chance to chat again, so you get to go like, this guy was a really good player, I enjoyed playing with him. And just things like that are good when it's hard, because obviously the player will need to add you back and stuff. In our game, I mean, you can just type in the world and people will see it. Communication is not exactly an issue in our game the same way.
Just tell somebody, I like you.
And maybe they'll like you back.
Or maybe they'll insult you back. Okay, next question. Could we get a Slayer Master unlock called Moss Drop and Roll that will allow us to kill Moss Giants during Fire Giants tasks? Currently, Moss Giants aren't killed with very high level Slayer, and this would be nice for a more passive way to get Briar Fighter kill count through Slayer.
My first response is just Moss Giants aren't Fire Giants.
Yeah.
If we were to make them available on Slayer, I'd rather just do it through an unlock instead. I think that fits what exists more. Question is though, why does everything need to be done through Slayer? Everything. It's already quite prevalent in the game.
Well, it's that or the power of the Dark Altar.
Yeah. I get the feeling this has been asked by an Iron Man who wants to get the Briar to staff for the Master Clue. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've had to drop that clue a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I just think, I think it adds an interesting dynamic to the game when if you want to make that your goal, you're not just passively getting it as part of Slayer, you're going out and making that choice. That's my personal view on that, at least. And you kill them fast enough. I don't think actually the accuracy and damage matters that too much. I think it's just people want to get a reminder to do like 100 every now and then, so maybe they passively get it is kind of the idea.
Okay. So we're coming to the end of the stream now. So at Old School RS, should you have any more questions for us? Next question. Could the Ancestral Recolor be released in game by some other means than Twisted League? It looked amazing and it shouldn't be forgotten about.
Well, I think Mod West has already confirmed that it won't be forgotten about.
Yeah, when we were taking it out of the test environment for Twisted Leagues, he copied it over to his, so that he had his personal one, so he had it there. I think I'd like to offer it for something more fitting to the game content, whether that is a Master Clue scroll, whether that's from challenge mode or even regular raids, because it was very popular. And judging by what people had said, and feel free to give me that information if you didn't get your opinion heard and stuff, but like it was very close to passing, which shows that a lot of people liked it. They were just like, best in slot recolor from leagues, maybe not, right, was kind of the consensus, and that they would want a best in slot recolor to come from things in the actual game as opposed to the side game mode.
So, Bounty Hunter? Clue scrolls? That kind of thing?
Yeah, something like that. But it does look sick, I agree. I'd be sad to see it go.
Okay. Squidney in the chat asks whether the Twisted League rewards would it be present on the collection log?
No, that is not the intention. It's seen as an optional thing you can sort of do that isn't, like we've made a distinction if it's not the main game mode.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very clear. So I don't want to give people a reason, like an extra reason on top of everything to say, oh, I missed out on getting that for this limited time while it was available until the next league comes along. So that was the reason we didn't want to do it through the collection log. I feel like anything in the collection log you can just pick up and go and work on that at any time, and Leagues is not that sort of game mode. Although over on the topic of Leagues, I did see a question in the chat about the ammunition saving relic, ammunition runes. Yes, it works on every spell. No, it doesn't work on Chinchompas. They explode. It wouldn't make sense for them to come back.
Cool. X-Chris says, grats him for maxing. Congratulations, X-Chris, if you were maxing whilst
Grats.
we're in a Q&A. 200 mil all next. And I think congratulations then to Sean Bay for hitting that achievement as well recently.
Yep.
Okay, next question. Luca asked, could we get a rune crafting boss? And that's it. No description, no design on how such a boss might work. I asked this mainly because I see in every thread I post up some sort of rune crafting buff. So do we want to say that there are no plans for us to heavily buff rune crafting via boss or minigame in the near future?
Well, there's plenty of them seem to think that Zalcano will already be the runecrafting boss that you need and deserve or something.
Might not quite be the XP rates that they're hoping for from a rune
Most
crafting
certainly
boss.
not in the answer to this question.
On that topic, though, I think the route that you went down with Zalcano was the better one as opposed to, say, Wintertodt, right? You train your skills and you make use of them, and having a higher level in that skill will help you kill the boss better, as opposed to the boss being the training method that is also then what you're going to use your skills for. I think that method of doing it was the better way to do it.
Yeah, I believe that the general consensus between a lot of the team now is that any further skilling bosses should be more like bosses rather than training methods.
Yes.
Which I believe is kind of the distinction that you're pointing out between Zalcano and Wintertodt.
Yes.
Where Wintertodt feels more like a fire-making training method, Zalcano feels more like a boss that makes use of mining and smithing and rune crafting.
And in that way, in that context of saying, do you want a more heavily focused on rune crafting boss? Sure, we can have a design, we can come up with something, but it would be more in the light of that as opposed to, hey, you now get 300k runecraft XP an hour.
We could always have a runecrafting boss in that you have to fight the thing and it just keeps walking back and forth between all the altars and the bank or something.
Similarly, I'm asking the next question because we're asked it so bloody often. What's the ETA on a new clan system or group Iron Man?
We don't know. That's partly because a lot of the dependencies come from outside of our team, and they also have to deal with things that arise, like you may remember earlier this summer when there was a lot of trouble with people logging in, and then there was a worse time with the too many logins message. That's gone back and forth a bit. The same people who are dealing with that kind of thing are the ones we need for clans, and certainly for Group Iron Man, which means that they can't easily commit to a time, because if they did and then something more critical arose, they'd have to change their plans. So, truth is, we don't know, other than that we want to do it as soon as we can, and once we've got what we need, we're going to try and prioritise it as much as possible at our end. Now, there was a question, I think, from Sweenbean, possibly I'm misremembering, but in the chat about whether a clan system would come with citadels and castles like that. No, it won't. For clans, it would make sense to give you some private space where you can have meetings without other players being around, maybe add a little customization for it, but I think it vanishingly unlikely that there'd be enough demand for us to recreate the many grindy skill activities you did in there to upkeep a colossal citadel and have dilapidation and multiple tiers and day and night and things of that nature. I just don't think that it added enough benefit for players to the RuneScape to warrant recreating all that for us. Whereas what we'd like is for you to be able to be in a clan and chat with a clan chat rather than just having to do with the temporary chat channels that are also used for other content. But while I do hope we can give you some private space we can have meetings, and I'd like you to be able to customise it a little, I do not recommend you expect citadels. Sorry, not on offer.
I think perhaps the best way to summarise is that we see a clan system as being as a way to supplement your gameplay rather than add new elements of gameplay, like an instant citadel where you're engaging with new content instead of playing the regular bit of old school RuneScape. Cool. Okay, we're coming to an end now. Mod John, could I ask you to show the Wilderness piece of artwork, please? So this is a piece titled "Ambush in the Wilderness" by, and please forgive me if I mispronounce your name, Zemal Hamzik. That is an incredible piece there.
Love it.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to leave you with a short video, but before we do so, I'm going to run through the announcements again. You can get more free membership with our friends at Twitch Prime. So click the Prime Loot Crown and follow the steps there, or type !Prime to read exactly what I've just said. The Halloween event this year ends with tomorrow's game update, so you've got until 11:30 a.m. game time to head to the chicken farm northeast of Lumbridge to begin the event and then complete the event. Bounty Hunter is being added to the live games tomorrow, so it's been in beta testing for the last few weeks. Thank you very much for engaging and providing us with your feedback. Leagues, to learn more about Twisted League, which arrives next Thursday the 14th of November. And yep, we'll be back next Wednesday at 5 p.m. GMT for the next Q&A. Sadly, I won't be here. I'm going on holiday, but Mod Gambit will be hosting. Mod John, could you play that little video and we'll go out to that one. Let's give the players a bit of weirdness. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.